All right, everybody. This is Dr. Osborne. This is your uh, February 4th daily adjustment. And I guess the question is what if someone told you that there was no such thing as as COVID, right? It's kind of an interesting thing, you know. And what if they said that COVID will eventually just become a flu? Or just like a cold. So, Karen, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to be there this morning for you to watch while you're drinking your coffee. But like I said, guys, welcome to your daily adjustment. This is where we stop trying to fix the world's problems and we start trying to fix thinking problems. And as we all know, all of our problems are all inside of our head. And so when we fix the outside, guess what takes care of itself? The things on the outside. I mean, when we fix the inside, the things on the outside take care of itself. So a lot of times, recently people have been asking me about how I did with COVID, and it's kind of an interesting thing where it's like if you had a test that you had to pass, and you hadn't studied for the test and you hadn't done the homework, you would be nervous, right? You would be stressed out. And so because I knew the plan for the last 25 years of my practice and in life. I've been working the plan. I've been working the five essentials. I've been watching how I think. I've been watching how I eat. I've been watching how the toxins that I've been putting into my body. I've been exercising on a regular basis, and I've been getting my nervous system checked and my body functioning at 100%. I wasn't nervous and I was fine. So thank you all for just checking in on me and making sure that I was fine. Remember, we always say that healthy people don't even know they get it. Unhealthy people get sick, and sick people, they get really sick or they pass, and that's an unfortunate thing. But I really do think that's interesting now that it seems that literally with all this knowing the plan, everybody only wants to talk about the vaccine lately, right? Because all across the nation, there's these mass vaccination campaigns, and they're just occurring everywhere. Literally, that's all that's on the news. And locally, we've had 217,000 vaccines that were administered as of January 28th in our county. And at that time, there was another 50,000 people scheduled to get a COVID vaccine in the next 7 days. So, with all this being done with this like intent to stop the spread of COVID-19, well, I understand, but what if I told you that there was no such thing as COVID-19 disease? And listen to me. First of all, it would probably burst your bubble to say that COVID-19 is not a disease, right? Like we think of it as a disease, but it's not a disease. Rather, it's this series of symptoms, much like any other syndrome, like fibromyalgia syndrome or irritable bowel syndrome. I need you to think, what if, right? What if think of the COVID-19 diagnosis? That's an umbrella of all these symptoms associated with influenza or any other like disease that brings on that fever. The virus SARS-CoV-2, it's not always present, unfortunately, or fortunately, when symptoms are present, right? And the symptoms aren't always present when the virus is present. That's interesting, like in my case. So, therefore, you're going to have to separate them. One is the virus, and the other is the set of clinical symptoms of COVID-19. Yet, the World Health Organization, they were really clear at the start of this whole thing, and what they said that these symptoms and the virus should not be separated. They said normally they would recommend this common sense approach, right? Normally people would recommend a common sense approach that dictates according to what we've been taught about the germ theory throughout, forever, right? There's Pasteur's germ theory that you have to have a presence of the virus for the disease. This causes a major problem because people who test positive using the PCR or rapid antigen methods, they're considered sick, but they more likely just have the virus in their body. And the illusion is that the virus causes the disease. And when that illusion falls apart, as many over time have had no symptoms, right? So they've had no symptoms. And I think it's kind of an interesting thing. When you don't have any symptoms, the germ theory says that we have to have this and then we get this. But what if we don't get the symptoms when we have this? There has to be something. Maybe it's the strong host. But all I know is this is why they invented the term asymptomatic carrier. And what this means is that somebody with a positive viral infection has no disease. Okay, hold with me right here. I know your head might be spinning and I might be asking you to think, but now we have a disease that's not a disease, but only a collection of symptoms, right? That doesn't need to, you don't even now need to have actually a positive test to have COVID, right? So we need to we need to do something about it. We need to get healthy and stay healthy. And I know it's hard. If we haven't done it up to now as a nation, why should we start now? Remember, as our country and our mindset, we are the sickest industrialized nation in the world. We take literally 70% of the world's medications. We're only 5% of the world's population. 80% of the opioids in the world are taken in the United States. We're the most vaccinated country in the world. So for us, the only solution that makes sense is based on our past actions would it be either to find a drug to treat the symptoms or to come up with a vaccine to try to prevent it. Like if you watch my earlier video, the experiments that they've started on you, the American people, everyone, we talked about this as an experiment. Everyone knows that we have a vaccine, but is it really a vaccine or an immunotherapy or a gene therapy? I mean, the need to rush to a vaccine starts with the first lie. The first lie is that the virus causes the disease. And if you believe that, you're going to believe that the vaccine will prevent and cure the disease. Secretly, in the case of Moderna and Pfizer, unfortunately, for the people who have already been vaccinated, they didn't develop a vaccine. And I know you've been told that, but it's not really a vaccine. It's a genetic therapy. It's kind of like it's a chemotherapy agent that is a gene therapy. It's not a vaccine. I want to be very clear about that. A vaccine would normally be deactivated virus or even live or weakened virus. This shot is instead inserting strands of synthetic DNA, invoking a creation of what's called the S1 spike protein, which is a pathogen. That viral spike protein is what causes all the problems. It creates all the inflammatory cascade, and ultimately, it's going to cause a serious reaction and death in people that have COVID. SARS-CoV-2, that viral spike protein, is toxic inside of humans. Now, you're going to have to ask the hard question right now. Why would they want your body to produce a very causative agent or a toxin to your body? And there's only one simple answer. There's probably others, but once you're vaccinated, your body is now newly infected, and the vaccine is a continuation of this subsequent infection. Vaccines are supposed to trigger what's called the creating of antibodies. This new COVID immunotherapy, this thing that they've created, it triggers the production of a toxin in your body. It's not a vaccine by any sense of the definition. It's not even prohibiting the infection. Even Pfizer's CEO openly admitted that the vaccine's not going to stop the infection from occurring in vaccinated people. Think about that. We're giving it to millions of people, and it's not even going to stop the transmission in vaccinated people. It's not even prohibiting the transmission. Once again, Pfizer CEO even admitted that the vaccine will not absolve you from actually having to wear a mask or stop social distancing. The COVID vaccine is a means by which your body's cellular metabolism is just going to be hijacked by this messenger RNA, inserted to make a toxin called the spike protein into your body that then allegedly your body somehow gets used to dealing with. But unlike a true vaccine, which is a trigger, which is designed to trigger your immune response without creating a foreign substance first, this one begins with with the creation of a toxin within your body. Look, guys, the innate wisdom of your body, it's going to be able to tell that the vaccine produced this spike protein, which is genetically modified, right? It's going to tell that it's unique, and it's going to tell that it's different from a naturally occurring coronavirus. The antibodies that your body does produce against this genetically modified spike protein, this toxin, they're going to be short-lived. Actually, estimates currently state that 5 to 7 months at the maximum. Remember, we did an article that said it could be up to 3 years if you actually got the coronavirus, which means that not only did the COVID vaccine need a loading dose, but it will need a booster dose, and it will require lifelong boosters to actually be effective according to their standard, right? So what other vaccine do you know that requires a booster every 5 to 7 months after an injection? I don't know about you guys, but can you smell the money that's piling up by Big Pharma yet? And you think this is about protecting you and your family still? Look, we got to look historically at the work of Dr. Fauci, and you can see that they've been trying for years. Healthy People 2020, look it up, to bring a universal vaccine to market. Could something happening that they're getting exactly what they've always wanted, a forced vaccine on the entire population? And the only challenge is what they created is not a vaccine. It's a bioengineered substance that hijacks your cellular genetics, right? It hijacks your cellular genetics to produce the very reaction that COVID is known for, the COVID-19 syndrome. So can you get COVID-19 syndrome from the vaccine? Yes, absolutely yes. That's not even a question. Yes, you can get COVID-19 symptoms from getting this gene therapy passed off as a vaccine. You can actually get COVID-19 symptoms from like up to 80% of the time, because remember, 80% of the people that get it are asymptomatic carriers. If you're exposed to COVID, according to the PCR rapid testing, 80% of the time that people will test positive results in symptoms, right? But remember, what they're measuring is the spike protein, and the vaccine is the thing that produces the spike protein. So guess what you're going to test positive for? And all of this for what? So just last week in the Journal of Science, it stated that one day COVID-19 will be no more deadly than the common cold. They did a computer modeling to predict this, and they said its fatality rate is going to fall below 0.1% of the seasonal flu, and the need for a vaccine is going to diminish as more people are actually infected. So we have all these lockdown, but although people will still get infected from COVID, the virus responsible for COVID, it'll be like a mild disease, like the symptoms of the common cold and other SARS viruses that are out there. And this is not me saying this, is researchers at Emory University. They said the more children that are infected, the better for all of us in the long term. Wow, maybe we shouldn't be shutting down schools. Natural childhood infection would give people the protection and later life against severe disease. And although it won't stop them from getting infected again, but just as we catch the common cold every year, the same thing what they expected will happen. So as more of the population gets infected, so the fatality rates and the need for mass vaccination will actually wane. So it's inconsistencies, right? They said it's going to wane in the near term. That's what one of the researchers said. And so he said that we have to weather the current pandemic until those levels of infection are achieved. And he said that reinfection is possible between 1 year, but even if it does occur, symptoms are going to be mild and the virus is going to be cleared by your body more quickly. Guys, there's a lot of inconsistencies here. The one thing that we've forgotten is that our body is brilliant and powerful. And so that although the current vaccination rollout is necessary and effective for the next year or so, it's going to become less critical when we actually get herd immunity. But unfortunately, they changed the definition of herd immunity to being the number of people vaccinated there, right? So their suggestion was, look, we just vaccinate the most vulnerable, let everybody else get it, and get this over with sooner. So my friends, we need to do better than this. We need to start to think better than this. We need to ask better questions. So clear thinking requires courage. You need to be courageous. It doesn't require intelligence to ask questions, but the real beauty is that thinking is a skill you can develop throughout your lifetime. Look, stay-at-home orders have heightened the fears and the stress brought on by social distancing and isolation. It's going to negatively impact the health of all of us Americans. There was a study done by the Population Reference Bureau. They did a review of recent research that shows that stress and fear, it can actually alter gene activity in your body and leave certain people more susceptible to infections like this coronavirus. And what's interesting is their findings are based on research that's supported by the National Institute on Aging. And what that does is that shows that the body's natural fight or flight mechanism, that stress response, is only heightened in chronically lonely people. That's what are we to this day when in these lockdowns? This response, it actually triggers not only inflammation, but it triggers the immune system's defense against bacterial infections, but it also inhibits our individual's antiviral response. So look, over the long term, this inflammation, it's actually going to increase the risk of diseases such as arteriosclerosis and cancer and dementia. We got real problems here. Okay, we need to separate science from politics. So it's time for you to take your health back. It's time for you to take your life back. It's time for you to take yourself back. Guys, look, remember 7 days without an adjustment makes 1 week, right? So I will see you tomorrow for another mind adjustment. This is where we adjust minds before we adjust spines. Why? So that we can change the world. We want to be part of the solution. So like, click, share this if this clarified your thinking, right? If this helped out some way. But remember, the lack of clarity that we have right now only creates confusion. And if you're confused, I'm going to ask you to start to think.